Welcome to The Rebound with Coach Matt Doherty.
Welcome to The Rebound. I'm Matt Doherty, and I'll be your host. Today, we're going in a little different direction. With the presidential election behind us, we're going to talk about some of the most important topics on the minds of all Americans. Number one, how did Donald Trump win? When he was outspent 2-1 on media by Kamala Harris. Legacy media is on notice because Americans got their information from non-traditional sources like X, Elon Musk, like podcasts, think Joe Rogan, and non-traditional shows like The Rebound on the First. Because people want the truth. And on this show tonight, we will honor those that have come before us on The Rebound and spoke truth to power, just like Donald Trump has done ever since he's come on the political scene. America's hungry for the truth, and I'm excited to share it with you all tonight. Donald Trump has become the 47th president of the United States. If you've been watching with discerning eyes and ears, you notice that he's up against a lot more than a Democratic opponent. It was proven in 2018 that Trump was the object of fraud conducted by the FBI and the DOJ. In the Senate Judiciary Report, it was revealed, and I quote, Inspector General Horowitz and his team uncovered systematic fraud at the Department of Justice surrounding a fake dossier and a fraudulent FISA warrant. It was later revealed that the fraud was paid for by his then political opponent, who at that time was the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. This was perhaps the biggest scandal in American history, but was somewhat eliminated. Robert Kennedy Jr. defines his opponent as the media industrial complex. MSNBC, CNN, HuffPo, Slate, Vox, ABC, CBS, NBC News. All have been aligned to deliver a consistent message against Trump or anyone that threatens their aspirations. Kamala Harris, as I stated, outspent Trump 2-1 and still had the entire media complex influencing every story in her favor, but still lost. President Trump was literally shot in July, and the story was essentially buried. As of today, we still know nothing, almost nothing about the would-be assassin or the second assassination attempt that was caught trying to execute our president only a few months later near a golf course in Florida. This appears to The Rebound to be a coordinated effort, and when we interview guests, they reveal how this is happening and why this is happening. Trump continued to speak truth to power, and the current administration and industrial media complex wanted to eliminate him, literally eliminate him from interfering with their current power and future goals. This was obvious when we interviewed investigative journalist Susan Crabtree on this show. Susan revealed that there was a cover-up within the Secret Service surrounding the events that led up to the first assassination attempt on Trump in Butler, PA in July. You've done some extensive coverage on Trump's assassination attempt. What's the thing that surprised you the most about the Secret Service coverage and security detail for that event?
Well, like everybody, I was very concerned about not having anybody on that roof and the various, strange and twisted sort of interpretations of why nobody was on that roof. Also, what's in the last few weeks, what's really hit me is the siloing of the communication between the local law enforcement, who are very big partners with the Secret Service that they rely on because they know the place itself, and they don't have enough people to go around, and they really desperately need local law enforcement. But were siloed that day, and the communications breakdown between the Secret Service and local law enforcement was just appalling that day. And we're now learning that the command center wasn't even joint. The Secret Service has a command center, and they're supposed to be local counterparts in there so that they can't be on the same radio frequencies. I've heard that that's technically, right, you can't do that, but they were supposed to be able to have interoperability, as the directors have testified over the last month, but they didn't, because there was only one of the state local law enforcement, the Pennsylvania state police, were in the command center, but nobody else. The butler, the people that were actually trying to follow Thomas Crooks, the shooter, they were not in the command center. So all of that was siloed. It's very disturbing.
I'm literally scratching my head. How the heck does this happen at the highest level in our country?
Now, I have been sort of shouting from the mountaintops for years that the Secret Service they've had a cultural problem. They have a manpower problem. Now, in the most recent iteration of their problems, they have a DEI problem, with Director Cheadle pushing DEI hiring to make up for the manpower shortage in some ways. And they have a quality hiring. They have people who would rather go to the Air Marshal Service and other government entities, law enforcement entities under DHS, the Homeland Security Department, because the hours are so long and the stress is so high that people are having trouble staying married in the Secret Service. So there's so many breakdowns, but there's also a leadership aspect to this that is just, we can go into it in depth, but there's always been a CYA culture in the Secret Service. That happened back in 2014 when we saw a lot of fence jumpers and the problems with the prostitution in Colombia. All of that, readers, that Congress thought it was solved. No reforms were really ever instituted.
We have interviewed Kash Patel twice on this show. Kash is a courageous whistleblower and truth teller. He is the author of the Nunes memo, which revealed FISA abuses by the DOJ and FBI. The memo states that the FBI purposefully relied on politically motivated sources to obtain a FISA warrant in October of 2016, which was subsequently renewed 3 times under the same false premise. This fraudulent FISA warrant was used to target a sitting president of the United States. Many people in government do not like Kash for exposing their corruption. The Associated Press, which we used to think of as a news source, has made it a mission to attack Kash and his values and principles. The AP is not news, and people that are looking for news from the AP will only receive PR, almost exclusively for the Democratic Party. Patel held key positions in defense and intelligence in the Trump administration and is currently being considered to direct the CIA. Not bad for a guy from Long Island. We spoke about the reasons why this is happening. When Trump lost to Biden, and then why did people like George Soros become involved in supporting DAs throughout the country and really trying to take down our country, and then supporting pro-Palestinian protests on campus? Why? I ask you, why? Why do people want to take control and destroy the fabric that is our country?
I think it's twofold. One, they want the power or the ability to control the levers of power, because guys like George Soros, they don't need any more money, right? You can only do so much with so much money. And then I don't think didn't happen overnight. I think people got wind of what the swamp was doing, and most of them joined forces with the swamp, like Soros and company. It's not just Democrats. Republicans did the same thing. a whole establishment class of Republicans just put out the revolving door of how do I succeed in DC so I can get my next paycheck and so I can get out there and have my name in the headlines. And Donald Trump blew up that narrative. Donald Trump blew up the swamp and they hated him for it. So what they did was they collectively combined forces and they said, not only can I, the Soroses of the world, come in and own government, but I can return it to what it used to be, which is government that was owned by a lot of bureaucrats and rich people who serve the needs of those bureaucrats and rich people. And I talk about it like the defense industrial complex or the lobbying industry. And to me, I found that just like you, I was like, this is highly offensive. Like, we don't go to serve so that we can serve ourselves. No one's forcing you to do that job. And so for me, that was like the essence of why they did it. And then when I ran Russiagate, when I ran that investigation, I told Devin Nunes, who I'd never met and didn't even know. And by the way, I didn't even know Donald Trump then. Like, I knew who he was, but we had never met or spoken or anything. And he goes, look, you have an intelligence background. You're a prosecutor. You're a counterterrorism guy. I said, so what? He's like, you want to run this investigation? I said, I'll make you a deal. I don't know you guys. I'll come to the Hill if I get to put out everything we find, whatever it is. If Trump's a Russian asset, we put it out. If he's in bed with these people, we put it out. I didn't think, as a former DOJ guy, we were going to find epic levels of corruption by the DOJ and FBI themselves to rig an election. It was just mind-blowing to me. And then the pushback we got when we tried to put out the truth was, I think, the most shocking surprise of all, but it was countered by the George Soroses of the world. They didn't want that narrative out there, the truth.
How do you respond to critics who claim that this is all conspiracy theories?
You know, that was the measure that we had to overcome. And we couldn't give speeches about it. We couldn't go on TV and do enough media interviews about it because there was such a slant in the media. There was such a vitriolic hatred for anything that might prop up Donald Trump, which I didn't understand because I was like, we're putting out the truth. So we learned really fast. The American people don't want to be spoken to. Give them the material. So we gave them the receipts. We gave them the documents. We gave them the memorandums from DOJ. We gave them the warrant. We literally lifted the curtain and said, you guys look. You guys tell me if this bank account says Hillary Clinton funneled money illegally to hire Christopher Steele. And then you guys look at the court documents to say, did the FBI lie? And all of that was, of course, answered in the affirmative. But that was a big step in getting the truth out. But that didn't stop the media. That was just the beginning. Now we're 8 years down the road.
We touched on media several times. And a big part of the communist playbook is controlling the media. How come we don't have more friends in the media? How come the right doesn't have more say, more control?
So I think whatever you want to call it, I call it a deep state and people get offended. And I'm like, look, I wish there wasn't a deep state. I wish I didn't write a book about destroying the deep state. I would love to have not ever endured through that. But the deep state, the leadership, again, in Washington, not Democrat or Republican, they are a uniparty, in my opinion. Yeah. They are in bed with one of the biggest conspirators in the world. That is the mainstream media. They use them to get their narratives out. They use them to get famous and rich. And they teamed up when Donald Trump hit the White House to say, which was ironic to me because I was like, what's Trump, from a national security guy? I can't speak to health or economy or whatever. But he wanted to kill terrorists, bring home hostages, end the wars, take out the cartels and seal the border. I was like, that's not like a conservative liberal thing. That's just like an American thing. And they went after him for him because he succeeded. And that was the irony to me. I was like, you're gonna break him down because he succeeded in the things you've been lobbying for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And what I realized was those folks never really wanted to answer that call because that's how they kept their existence going in Washington, and the media supported them.
OMJ Clothing is an elite men's clothing store that provides a vast array of spectacular brands of men's lifestyle apparel for every day. Elevate your business upscale casual at OMJ. Success comes from standing out. The Rebound is sponsored by Sector Spider ETFs, a unique family of exchange-traded funds that divide the S&P 500 into 11 sector index funds. You can buy just the sectors you like or customize the S&P 500 by weighting the 11 sectors to meet your financial objective. Please visit them on the web at sectorspiders.com. That's sector, SPDRS.com.
Alps Portfolio Solutions Distributor, a registered broker-dealer, is the distributor for the Select Sector Spider Trust.
The CIA needs help, and honestly, earlier this year, we interviewed Patriot Pedro Israel Orta. Pedro is a whistleblower that has faced serious consequences for ethically doing his job properly. Another patriot that spoke truth to power and was eliminated as a result for his fidelity to the truth. Standing up to the government is hard. If you're accusing them of doing something wrong, it's even harder. Well, Pedro, you have such an interesting background, and you obviously have a lot going on. I want to address a leadership principle that is really, I think, your sweet spot, speaking truth to power. I think all great leaders need to do that, but few do. And then one thing that I like to share in this show is that everybody's a leader. Just because you're not at the top of the org chart doesn't mean you can't lead. Tell us about this statement, speaking truth to power, and how it resonates with you.
It's a tall task, a mandated task to do the right thing at all times, even when nobody is looking. In my case, I was just doing my job. That's all I was doing. I was a manager, a deputy chief of base in a war zone, and I was mandated by laws to basically call out things that needed to be called out. Our lives were being put in danger through just plain stupidity. Unfortunately, the chief of base, nice lady, very qualified in some endeavors in some fields, but well out of her place in this particular post in the war zone. And I spoke up about certain things that needed to be spoken about. And unfortunately, one thing led to another and caused me to basically be fired from that job. And that's a whole nother story that leads into just an avalanche, a snowball increasing in size of reprisals. But the point is, we're all required to do the right thing. And the right thing is very simple. Do good to your neighbor. Treat others as you want to be treated. And, when we see wrong and we turn a blind eye, we are being a participant in the evil. I could not turn a blind eye and not speak up, particularly when at the end of the day, what happened was a subordinate was being harassed and they wanted to basically fire him. So I basically took a bullet for a subordinate in a way that put me on the X, where I was the one basically that got hung. And I could go on and on and on. But for all of us listening, the point I want to make is that you are a leader, as Matt is saying. You're called to lead where you're at. And you lead not just by saying, but at the end of the day, again, I use that word at the end of the day, what matters most is what we do. We can talk the talk, but if we don't walk the talk, we're being hypocrites.
That's right.
And society needs less hypocrites and more righteous persons who are doers rather than sayers. And I'll stop there because I can keep on going.
Now, your book is about a CIA whistleblower. Was this the same incident that prompted you to write the book, or are there additional incidents?
Oh, there's additional incidents because eventually what happened is I blew the whistle on waste, fraud, significant abuses of authority, significant specific endangerment of public safety. Basically, I spoke truth to power.
Right.
I spoke up. And when you speak up, you're basically blowing the whistle. Mm-hmm. You're a truth teller. I told the truth.
Right.
And what happened was instead of trying to fix small problems that could have easily have been fixed, they created a mountain out of a molehill. And it just snowballed and increased in size. And eventually I ended up basically blowing the whistle on the broken whistle. What I mean by that is your ability to speak truth to power, to tell leadership something that they need to hear is broken because they don't want to hear about it. And in the process of you speaking up, they end up taking reprisals against you. They basically, every element of the CIA that could have easily fixed this problem, whether it was EEO, the Inspector General, the grievance process, human resources, my own career service. All these elements basically became elements of a bureaucratic bullying campaign to silence and destroy me, to get me to quit, to leave, resign. And because I chose not to quit, leave, or resign, but I chose to now blow the whistle to the higher ups, then they came after me to bully me and beat me with the Office of Security, calling me basically an insider threat and threatening to take my job from me. And that's what they did. They basically kicked me out.
What did they try to label you, and what was the lowest point? Tell me a story of when it really hit you like, I don't know if I can get through this. What was the story, a description of the lowest moment for you back around 2018?
2017, 2018, this time frame. Right before I got fired, I had more job denials. I had the CIAIG claiming they finally investigated, but they did not investigate fully, not looking at all the evidence, and it was a sham investigation. I have proof of that. And they launched a counter investigation against me. While I worked at the IG, they were saying that I was in there lacking independence. So here I am, absolutely stretched. And it continues to snowball and get worse until eventually I got fired in 2018 on paper. Now, the final date is still debatable, whether it's October 2018 or January 2019 when I got the official notification. But then I've had a shoulder surgery. So now I'm having to go through a difficult shoulder surgery alone, the recuperation period, being fired, not being able to retain a new attorney. They refused to allow me to retain a new attorney. They came up with excuse after excuse after excuse. And it was this fall of 2018 where I was basically at the end of the rope. Got fired, bad shoulder recuperation, no resolution to the reprisals, no investigation on the follow-on reprisals, absolutely nothing I can do about it. They wouldn't let me take a new attorney. When I finally hired that attorney, when they finally approved it, was after I was fired. And they had the audacity to tell the attorney, well, we got nothing to discuss. He was fired. Mm-hmm. And I'm basically, exactly.
And your wife and daughter moved to Colombia, so you're by yourself going through this.
I'm by myself going through this. I'm also an outcast per se. Yeah. Nobody from my ex-employer wanted to talk to me. In some ways, I needed to protect them as well. So I was completely alone without my daughter, right. my wife, recuperating from the shoulder surgery. Basically at that point in time, I knew I had to get out of Washington, D.C. And by the grace of God, I had some people that I knew in Tulsa who helped me to basically buy a house and move to Tulsa without even looking at the house.
19th century British politician Lord Acton once said, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." We have shown you a few examples of Americans being penalized for behaving like patriots as they attempt to protect the system our founding fathers created and that we are committed to following. It includes principles and ethics, and when they are breached, we must have a system to shine a light on it. Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Susan Crabtree, and Pedro Orta all have the guts to stand up for what is right. We need more Americans that speak truth to power. All truth tellers need our foundational support so we can continue to make America great again and to launch it towards greatness for another 248 years. This week, The Rebound honors those who speak truth to power. Thank you for joining us on this show.